Hi, I'm Mike Seymour from FXPhD.com. We're going to be giving you a quick rundown on how to get up to speed with Scratch. In this class, we're going to run through how to set up your Scratch from being a basic user so that you can get up to speed and start looking at some of the editing and grading functions on Scratch. We've been using Scratch here for years. It's a really great tool for having a kind of central hub for data management as well as, of course, editorial and grading. Let's get started. Okay, well, this is Scratch, and if we just click anywhere up here on the top part of the screen, you'll see that it up-pops the system information. So I'm actually running on a Mac for here. Now, I actually started on Windows, but I happen to be on Mac. If you click that away, I don't sort of consider, it's funny to say this, this is of course the Scratch program. I don't really consider myself in Scratch until I enter a project. But before we get into Scratch, to use that incorrect expression, I just want to show you a couple of things you need to do to set up where you're working. And so over on the left here, you'll see user settings, and you want to set these up, or at least you may want them to be the same as what I've got, because then you'll be able to follow along if you need to with your own system. So the menus, I have circular menus. I'm old school. I started with Scratch back in the day, and so I use circular menus. But if any of your things look different to mine, then this is probably where those differences are coming from, just like the buttons, for example, or anything else would be set up here. And there's just one I wanted to flag while I'm here, which is this control gearing. So when I wanted to change this value, this is normal, you might have it come in at, say, 25. So let's say you opened it up and it was 25. There you go. Actually, I can just click on it and hit the number 25 if I want as well. And also, just a little tip, if I click here and I see that number somewhere on screen, like I wanted the number 0, of course I'm going to hit 0, but if I see the number 0, if I just click on anything else, it grabs the 0 from there and whacks it in, or its closest approximation, which in this case is 1. So for example, I want to get to 25 right now, I click there and it's put 25 in normal. It's lifted the number only from whatever number box I happen to see on the screen to something having to type. Okay, but let's imagine you've come in at 25 and you want to get to 75. You would click on that and wind it around, I'm doing this really slowly, to get up to 75. And that's what my default is. That's what I like using as an operator. If I wanted to move that even faster, I can hold down the Shift key on my keyboard, and holding the Shift key on my keyboard will invoke this next one underneath, which is kind of an accelerator. And so it will just accelerate up what I'm doing. So if you're finding that your values are wrong or not what you want them to be, then you can just either type them in to make them match mine, or just wind them up. And I just say this because sometimes it's a bit annoying when you're seeing somebody operate and their system is operating differently to yours, and you want it to be the same so you can kind of keep up. And there are other things you can set here, like what happens if you do a screen snapshot or whatever. But that's sort of the basic stuff. And then if you go to project settings, you need to set up where your output is, because your input and media is, because it's basically not going to have any media to look at just yet. So we need to set up some path to the media and paths that you would render to and stuff like that. So you need to do some basic housekeeping to set up these paths of where you're going to. And you might want to set up the format for the project in how you want to work, and aspect ratio, etc. Okay, but let's assume for a second that you get that set up and are matching pretty much to ours. The fun begins when you actually enter a project. So we've set up a project here, and I hit Enter Project, and I will go into what I consider to be Scratch. Okay, now this is, let's just grab you an edit. This is a pre-existing edit, and so we can just use this to understand our way around the user interface. Because I'll admit, Scratch is different to other products. That's kind of a good thing. So we're in timeline mode. This is very important, and what we see here doesn't kind of look like a timeline. Mainly because it feels like these edits are all the same duration, because the icons are all the same size. And that's because in this view of the world inside Scratch, what we're seeing is just the ordering of the shots in what we call slots. So this slot comes before this slot, becomes before this, and the width of the slot makes no bearing on how long the edit is. Now you can hit play here, and you'll go into a player menu, and now you'll see underneath much more an indication graphically of how long the shots are. As you can see here, we get that little sort of thing. And there is, in fact, an entire editing menu. Just hit construct to go back to the construct. But here that doesn't happen. All we have here is this entire construct with everything set up. And this is a unique thing for Scratch, and something that takes a little bit of getting used to. Now, if it was a normal timeline in a Final Cut Avid sense, if I was to take this, I'm just going to click on this clip and move it above that one, you'd clobber what's underneath it, right? That's on top of that. but it doesn't work that way in Scratch. In Scratch, what's happening is that these might be versions. So the director might, for example, say, I'm not quite sure about the order of these shots. Let's try the edit with this one first. And then if they didn't like that, we could maybe go to this one or to this one. In other words, these are kind of held back in reserve rather than being active players right now in this timeline. We have a shot, and we might want to swap another shot in. We want to change the order around and say, you know, let's see this one first. In which case, now if I hit play, this shot will be in the edit. These two shots aren't going to be seen right now in the edit. They're not above this one in the sense of sitting on top of it. They're just there as kind of versions. And so quite often you'll actually see the same picture replicated many times up with slightly different color grades, for example. And then you can really quickly swap in virtually real time whatever you want to be the edit. So if you say, oh, well, you know, let's try that version we saw yesterday, and just swap it down in, and away you go. And in fact, if they go off the top of the screen, they'll just scroll down. Okay, so that's the basic concept. The only exception to that is there is two other sort of slightly less common ways that we use the timeline. Now, I'm giving you the sensible kind of way of using the timeline, and both of these are common things. One of them is stereo. If I go to a stereo clip here, this is actually a left and right eye representation. Now, there's more we have to do to set up stereo. This happens to be some ARRI RAW files that we shot on a stereo ARRI rig. But when I've set up a stereo construct, and I haven't done it for you yet, I would actually have both of these active, but they would now be playing out as left and right eye. So as I went along, all of the clips to my right here would play if they were there, and they would play left and right eye. These now, instead of being one special sort of bottom row that gets played, the bottom two get played, and that's just how stereo is handled inside of Scratch. Okay, there's only one other exception to that, which I think is worth noting straight away. If I go here to look at this timeline, it seems to have one clip in it. But if I was actually to hit this next button, staging, so we're still looking like the timeline. We're in the construct, we haven't moved from the construct. If we go to staging, then suddenly this clip pops up. So what's that? Where'd that come from? Well, I can explain that. What we have here is a clip. And when I hit staging, we still have a clip. It's just these clips are contained inside that clip. If I hit play, you can see that I've got a comp of Angie, our presenter, over a background. It's not a particularly great comp, but it's maybe I've done a slap comp just to show the director how the two background and foreground will line up. So you see that I've been navigating between the construct and the player by just pressing these two buttons here. But in fact, there's a much more efficient way of getting around in the world of Scratch. That's hold down the right mouse button. So I hit down the right mouse button, I get this menu coming up. And this allows me to jump between the various worlds of Scratch. And these are the big players in the world of Scratch. So I've got the construct, which is the player we looked at. Then I've got an editor, which is going to allow me to, obviously this is one clip at the moment, do an actual edit and adjust the edit. I also have matrix, which is the color corrector. So for example here, if I wanted to crush Angie a bit more, I could do that and adjust the shot a bit. That's easy enough to do. If I wanted to adjust the background, for example, and I could maybe change the tint of the background, I could easily do that. All of that's happening in what we call the matrix, which also is where we do the keying, by the way. And then we've got the process menu, which lets us set up things, especially, for example, with red files. This is where I'd be setting up how I'd bring in and what color space I'd be leaving. So we're going to deal with all of that in 1 second. Let's just go back to the construct. So to finish that, we've got our staging. We go back to timeline, and the same thing applies. I can go into play, and I could do any of the things that I wanted to do in exactly the same way. But of course, if I go back to the construct and look at an actual timeline, as I did here, you'll notice that when I go into play, or for example, the editor of play, I should say, now I can actually see that edit with not only my player view of the timeline, but actual edit points. And I can adjust those edits and move clips around and change things. And here I've inserted a section of black between two shots. So what I've got is a series of worlds or places to go that do the big things that I need to do. And the really nice thing about Scratch is it's pretty simple. Most people would, I guess, assume that the player would be your base, or maybe your editor would be your base, but in fact it isn't. Your base is the construct, and you need to kind of get used to the construct as a kind of a home base that you basically do everything from. Okay, so next thing. we want to just have a look at what we're seeing in the construct. And the seeing in the construct is these images, but you can see some bunch of stuff over the top of them, and we should just mention what that is. Firstly, we have some information at the bottom about where the file came from. If I click down here, I actually get a lot more information. So I've actually got the name of the file, and I've got, for example, the frame rate and various things to do with timecode and stuff. In fact, in this case, we've shot this with the red camera. And if I hit extended properties, I actually get to see the metadata that came with the red camera. So that's a really good thing. Also, you'll notice up in the corner, we seem to have some little bars up here. Okay, so that's actually the bar graph that tells me, or the bar codes that tell me what's going on. So the first of these is primary. This one has a primary grade on it. This one doesn't. The next one is secondaries, and then scaffold, and then finally framing. And you'll see that nearly all the clips in this timeline have framing done on them because they were all shot in 4K. So these clips were literally filmed in 4K, but we're just looking at them in HD. Okay, so I've got my construct. I know what I'm doing. I can edit and move around them. How do I just manipulate the menus? Well, you've seen me just jump quickly between things up here. These are not menus. These are entire constructs. So each one of these represents a construct, and it could be a stereo construct. It could be different reel. It could be a different version. It could be a different version of a commercial. It could be that you've got multiple stacked up versions here that you're trying to decide what to do with as a kind of a staging area and dealing with that kind of stuff. It doesn't really matter how you see to use it because the constructs are really, really versatile. You could set them up depending on your project in any number of ways, or you could just set one up as a place to muck around with some material while you're working. To bring up this menu, however, if you're not seeing it, is a swipe. So if I swipe to the left, I bring up the construct, which is the constructs, I should say, which is incredibly useful. And you'll see a little, what looks like a recycling logo at the side there. So if I click this, you see I get a thumbnail up of where I am parked on the timeline for this particular construct. If I click it again, I'll get notes, and I'll come to that in 1 second. But it gets me back to where I am. So this is quick for moving around. You've already seen me do that. I'm going to swipe that off. If I swipe the other side, I actually get outputs. Now, I don't set out outputs here, but I might have outputs to go out, and they would be swiped the other way. If I swipe, let's just go into the player for a second. Here I am in the player. If you just go just to the player, not to the editor. Okay, so here I am. If I swipe left, I've got things that are to do with grading now. They look very much like the constructs, but now they'll be to do with grading, scaffolding. If I swipe the other way, I've got that outputs that were in the layering and the versioning that I was talking about a minute ago. Now this is important. If you swipe down accidentally, you might see your menus suddenly disappear. And that's simply so that you can minimize your menus if you want to present to somebody. So I've minimized at one level. I minimize it again. It seems to have gone away completely. But if you just swipe one more time, they'll come back. Okay, we've swiped left, we swiped right, we swiped down. What happens if we swipe up to the top of the menu? And you'll see we get a few really, really useful things up here, not least of which is some controls on just how big the picture is. You can fit it to the available space. You can bring it in so that nothing is cut off. And there's a bunch of things here, including a magnifying glass. There's also just ways of displaying your channels, if you wanted to look at it, RGB channels or monochrome, or if there was a, for example, an alpha, you would see it here. There isn't. I can do a luminance-only version here. So these are terrifically useful because Scratch is just so fast. So here I am, and I wanted to maybe look at what that was like just in terms of luminance levels. I click that one button, and this is all in real time. It's still going to be able to play. And even while it's playing, I can kick that in and out if I wanted to look at something. So there's a lot of advantages in the way that Scratch is set up just for performance, and a lot of these things will maintain real time whenever they can. So we now know how to get around Scratch. Critically, press our right mouse button to get to the different worlds that we can inhabit, we can do stuff in. Swipe left, right, or up or down if you want to adjust what you're seeing, and try and remember always that the construct is home base. With that basic information, you're pretty much ready to go. So let's actually start by loading something up. Okay, so we've got these different slots, and we've got these different slots in different constructs. But what if I wanted to start from scratch? All right, well, let's do that. So I'm going to make sure I get this open, which is my area where the constructs are, and I'm going to add one. So let's add one. We're going to call my first, I can spell, construct. Okay, so hit return. So I've got nothing in there, and I now need to add some stuff to the construct. Now what's really important is if I go to the media menu here, you'll see that there's this thing called depth. Start by putting that on depth 0. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to load stuff in with this on depth 0. Now this is going to make a big difference into how things work. So I'm going to go to load layers, and you've already set up somewhere that is your place that you're storing stuff. I'm going to be loading some Epic footage. I'm going to be loading Epic footage from the new Red Epic camera. And so I have here Epic footage, which is great, and I have a bunch of different magazines, and each of these magazines was a different shoot magazine. So you can see here, if you know anything about the files, we actually have different R3D files. So I've come in at Epic level, which is here, and I now have 4 magazines, and like the 5th one here, for example, has quite a lot of shots in them, and each one of those folders that was set up by the Red camera has one actual shot in it. Okay, so 4 magazines that we need to deal with, obviously quite a lot of footage. I'm just going to bring them in. So what happens? I'm going to hit, first of all, to make it the red code, R3D. So you can see here that it's bringing in R3D files, and I'm going to click on Epic to bring in all of the stuff that's under at that point. So make sure you select red code R3D, and bang. And so it's now processing this straight R3D footage. I mean, we haven't edited this at all. This is just how fast it is. And you can see here that I've got a lot of material that's immediately come in. And, you know, terrific. But I'm only in one slot. So if I hit play, for example, right now, I'm going to be playing only one clip. It's, you know, clearly stacked on top of each other as we discussed a moment ago. So I'm not going to see all these other ones. Now, it might be kind of laborious to go up there and say, well, can I move that one to here? Can I move that one to here? That's going to be really kind of dull. So what I might want to do is I want to bring it in a sort of a cleverer way. So let me just undo a couple of those things, and we have an undo buffer over here. Now, I want to select all these clips and just get rid of them. So I'll hit Control-A, selects everything, and I'm going to bin the selection. So I'm back to where I started. This time I'm going to change that depth to be 1. Okay, so the same operation should be identical. I'm going to select the Epic stuff. I'm going to make sure I'm on bringing in just the R3D codes on the Epic, hit select. Now it's going to go through, remember I had 4 magazines there, and again we're not editing, this is all in real time, this is just how fast Scratch is. It's going to process all 4 magazines, and now I have 4 magazines. Now each magazine, of course, is got quite a lot of clips in it, as you can see here, so there's quite a lot of different takes and stuff, but that's great, that's what I want. But each magazine, of course, is in its own slot. Well, that's one way of working, of course. It may not be exactly what I want yet because I still want to do more in terms of splitting this up, but it's not a bad start. So I could go again. So let me just Control-A and bin everything there. You'd probably be on 1 most of the time, but 3 is the one that would be kind of the logical conclusion to this, which is to bring in the Epic footage, just the R3Ds, and we're just going to bring it in straight across the bottom. Now, because it was different magazines, we've got blank spots so that we can see it. But again, this is all real time. This is straight 5K material all being loaded up into Scratch. You can see the Scratch is having to work a little bit as it first sorts stuff out, but once it's sorted stuff out and got all of the little proxies made up, we're great to go. So for example, if somebody wanted to review all of the shots, we could start with slot 5, and we could just start reviewing them. Now the only thing is, you might perceptively realise that this is being zoomed in a lot, and you'd be right, we're playing the R3D in its full normal size. But that's okay, we can fix that. Let's go to the process menu, and we're actually going to take the inputs and we're going to scale them. So what we're going to do is scale this to fit. Now I'm at the moment on this shot here in particular. If I was to say fit width, I've now fitted that shot down. So let me just undo that so you can see the difference. So if I scale, no scaling, that's what we brought it in as. Because it's 5K footage, I just want to scale it on my screen, so I'm fitting to width. Obviously I could fit to height as well, but I'm just going to fit to width. And now I've scaled that clip, which is great. And then I go to the next clip, and guess what? That's not going to have done that to everything, because if I just move down the timeline a bit, we're back to clips that are obviously zoomed up a whole lot. Well, if I actually did all this time and then did fit width, now the entire timeline, all of this 5K footage has been scaled so that it's now the correct So I can now review rushes. Again, you saw me before, if I swipe down, I might want to make that a bit bigger. I might want to, in fact, expand it out to here. Let's get rid of that one. And now I could review rushes with the director on set in real time. We haven't had to do any processing. This is the R3D files coming in 5K. And really, really nice, impressive performance on being able to bring these in. And the reason these are moving slowly is not that the computer can't keep up. We literally shot this at 5K at 120 frames a second. So this is glorious material. Okay, so let's swipe down again to get back my full menus, go back to the construct, and now you can see that you've got the material loaded in, and you're ready to go. You can just start working with this material, reviewing it, going through it, and obviously start experimenting with editing it, grading it, and working with it. All right, so I want to just do something with this footage. And what I want to do is I want to do a simple grade on all of it and output it to a QuickTime so that the director can look at it tonight on his iPad or whatever else he wants to do with it. And so let's just take it through that process. So it doesn't really matter which clip, I'm just going to click there, which clip I'm actually in. I'm just going to go now into the matrix. This is the editor. Now, when you come in, it's probably going to look like this, depending on what you've been doing, because it remembers where you last were. So what do I want to do? Well, what I want to do is do a curve adjustment, because I find on a lot of footage with the flame that we just want to adjust the curves to make the blacks a little blacker so it sits up a bit. So I'm going to do that. But before I even do that, I might want to look at the histogram to make that decision. So if I just swipe over here, I can pop that up. Now that comes up here in various forms. That's just the curves. That, in fact, if I was to do something here, you'd see it being mirrored in a summary form up there. And then I have, obviously, vector scope. And then I have the histogram. And this histogram, by the way, if you hit the plus key here, and actually just get rid of, I don't need that one right now. I don't even need these, actually. There we go. If I just have plus on here, see it spreads it out. And you can see what I'm talking about here. And there's a little gap here in the blacks. It really, like, you know, has latitude in this footage. It was shot well. So I'm going to want to just crush that down a bit. And so that's what I'm kind of doing with my curve right now. So I'm just going to take that away. And you can see here that I might just want to make it a bit punchier so that nobody gets upset. And this is just, you know, kind of a standard thing that we do for rushes. This is obviously not the grade, but I just want to have it looking zingy, but I don't want to have it looking like it's wrong. And by the way, the curves actually come in under the secondary. So you can see here that it's now lit up. If I was to reset where I was and go back, you can see there that that's gone off. And the second that I touch it, it comes back on, so I know what I'm doing. Okay, so there's my little adjustment that I want. Feels good. Of course, just like we did with the resizing, I don't want to have to do that to absolutely every clip individually. I want to be consistent. So I just hit copy. And what I'm going to do is just go back to the beginning of the timeline, right at the start here, of everything that I want to deal with. And then I'm going to hit paste. And when I hit paste, I come up with this, which allows me to paste, obviously, the individual things. This clip doesn't have that curve on it, as you can see. But if I hit paste forward, it'll actually paste everything in the timeline all the way down the line. And so this will overwrite the function all the way down. I can confirm that, which I do. And so now I've got that punchier grade, as you can see, on all of this sword footage all the way down the line, which is great, and even this stuff down here. So that's terrific. It's just what I want. I want this stuff to all look really good and impactful, because it's just for the director to make sure he feels good about what he did today. Okay, so let's go back to the construct. I need to output that. How am I going to do that? I'm going to go to the output here. Now, this is quite useful if I have a burn-in, because the director's going to phone me up and make some comments. So I want to put a burn-in on my output. You notice this icon's changed here? If I select that output and hit that, now it's gone golden. Now, this is important, because what I'm doing now is only affecting this output. It's not in the master, as it were. It's in the output. And so now for the output, if I go to the matrix, I can actually hit Insert. And this brings up this menu here. These are plugins that I can use. And I want to actually output with a burn-in. So I'm going to click on the burn-in one. And what that's doing is it's allowing me to basically apply this burn-in to my output. So I hit, obviously, Apply Selection. OK, so now I have an output up here that's going to be a burn-in. So let's type something in so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to write day 2. Day 2 rushes, a bit big. So I just reduce the point size on that. And maybe I want to insert something like the time code. So I hit insert and I'll look at what I want. Do I want the record time code? Yeah, I do. We know where we are then. So I've got the return, the insert time code now on here, and I can move that in so that's sort of where we want it to be so we can see it. So I now know day 2 and I've got the time code inserted there. If I just go here, I can put a bit of spacing in there so that it looks neat and tidy. Or in fact, I might want to drop it down to the bottom of the screen somewhere that it doesn't matter. Now, I'm going to output this inside an aspect ratio that is this frame here. It's like a 16:9 HD kind of frame. So if I was to go off the picture right now and into the black, that'd be a good thing from the director's point of view, right? Because it wouldn't bother him, because the picture, if you remember, is not 16:9. So I've actually got black top and bottom to sort of pad that out, like a letterbox. I'm not hiding anything. It's just that the image itself is being fitted inside this window. If I was actually doing this, by the way, which I can do, a burn-in on a clip, not on the output, I would need to stay on the image because otherwise, obviously, the image only exists to the edge unless you're outputting it inside something else. In this case, we're outputting inside 16:9, 1920x1080, and so that black is added to us, and I can use it to put my timecode stuff down. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That looks pretty good. You'll see now that I've got this construct with a burn-in sitting above here on the side. Remember I mentioned that was my output here? So that looks great. So now go back to the construct, and you'll see here that we've now got this here as a burn-in. Okay, so what do I need to do now? I've set this up, but I haven't yet set up to do this as a QuickTime output. So what I'm going to do is go to the same place that I was before and insert a QuickTime, which was this one here, because we want to output this as a QuickTime. Apply selection. Oh, look, you can see now there's another one added to the outputs. And so if I again go back and have a look at that, you can see now that there's that additional, if you hold down the space bar, by the way, you can remove this down so you can see what you've got better on the screen. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is add that to a queue, because I want to queue that up, and I can actually have a look at the process queue, and you can see I have one thing in here, which is to process some 1920x1080, and it's quite a lot of frames. It's not doing anything at the moment. And it's going to go out to my render file that I set up at the very, very beginning of what's been going on. So that's possible, and I could now set up multiple outputs if I wanted to. I could just add, for example, another output, or I could add an output actually from here. Would be a more sensible thing to do. So if I just get rid of that one, if I add an output here, this might be something that some other producer wants. So if I add another output at this point in the pipeline, you can see that we're going to have a second output. What's great about this second output, however, is it doesn't have the burn-in on it. This is coming off my construct. So my construct is now output here without burn-in, and my construct is output here with burn-in as a QuickTime. So, for example, this might be a set of DPX frames to send over to the visual effects guys, where this would be the burn-in QuickTime version to send to the director. And if I was to add that, if I get that and add it to the queue and then look at the process queue, you can now see I have two things going out. And of course this one here is going to be different than this one here. And that one down here at the moment is set up to go out as a DPX file. I could choose anything else I wanted to. So that one's DPX. If you look at the one here, this is the output that we're going to be going out with, which is a QuickTime. And so then I can pick what type of QuickTime I want to go to, and I can actually select where I actually pick the file type. So I can go here, and you can see there's a whole lot of different types of QuickTimes I can output if I wanted to output in any particular different format. There are, of course, all the ones that are loaded on the system. Okay, so all I'd have to do now is actually, I could set a process range if I wanted to, so I don't have to output the whole thing, but otherwise I would just go and start processing the queue, and that would actually output my two streams, a DPX stream and my QuickTime stream. And I can just do that and hit go. Well, that's it. I hope you found that helpful. And in other classes, we'll be covering things about setting up for doing LUTs, setting up workflows for stereo, and also things to do with using basically a dailies workflow for VFX, just prepping the files for visual effects type work. I'm Seymour from FXPhD.com. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks so much. Bye.